There you go.
Good afternoon, everybody. Welcome to another live stream of Communication into Translation. I am Taki. Thank you, Nate, for having me coming on to the show. And this time we'll be going into what is the true love language. Now, I know there has been a lot of literature on the love language being of somebody being like if somebody's a touchy person or like sound or is the different type of aspects that we're used to. But I like to get into more so the intent of what is actually being communicated by breaking down that the word love is a label. That is a label, meaning like we can call the computer a computer, or we could call it advanced technology, or we could call it um, uh, whatever we want to call it. Pretty much is what I'm saying. That's a label. But what it functions as is a total different truth from what actually the label is. And what we have been conditioned is to be attached to the label without really putting energy into the function of it. I like to use the word love in English. We use the word love in English. When if we were using love in Swahili is kupenda. I believe love in Spanish is amos or te amo. But
Amor,
is amor.
amor.
All right, so we got amor, then we got kupenda, and we got love. So these are three different labels, right? So even though the labels are different, does it change the function? It doesn't. So it shows that we could create different labels applied to this function. And what's happening is when we're communicating to each other that we love each other, we are assuming each other's understanding of the word love, which I will be proving today that what a person is communicating as love is not actually what you assume it is. Now, we go back into like earlier podcasts where I was breaking down that we have the term that everybody has an opinion. And and that is true. Everybody does have an opinion. Well, what exactly is an opinion? Well, an opinion is a dualistic aspect, meaning that when somebody's giving you their opinion, they're either communicating to you what they think or what they feel. These are the only two aspects of what is opinion. When you're giving a person your thoughts and your feeling, that's actually an opinion. It's a duality. This is what I think. This is what I feel. That's actually an opinion. If you just communicate to a person what you think, you just gave them your thought. If you communicate to a person what you feel, you just gave them a feeling. But in order for it to be labeled as an opinion, it has to be the complementary aspects of your thoughts and your feeling being expressed. That is actually an opinion. So when it comes to an opinion and we're communicating an opinion, it'd be wise for us to address in the beginning of the conversation what it is that we are communicating to that person. Naturally, men express their thoughts, which is past and future, before they express their feeling, which is present moment. So, in the form of when men are communicating more so to women, we will communicate, this is what I think. And I will always advise, because the logic language is not the strong suit when it comes to women, because they're more so concerned with the feel and not so much of the past and future of things, just actually what is right now. You don't have to be long winded in being able to communicate your thought when you're communicating to your complementary partner, meaning feminine energy. Practice on being able to express your thought with very few words and put more energy into the expression of the feeling when communicating with complementary partner. For example, complementary partner, feminine energy, may say, How do you feel about this plant? Masculine complementary aspect. I think it is nice. I feel that it would be better if it was a little bit further over there and not so close to me. So that's the feeling. So it's a difference. So what I'm communicating is that when we address an opinion with this introduction to what it is we are stating, meaning this is my thoughts and this is my feeling, then we can have more accurate articulation when it comes to what we're disagreeing with the person on. So if I'm saying this is what I think and this is what I feel, if you have a disagreement with me, then you'll be like, well, I disagree with what you think, or I disagree with how you felt, or I agree with your thoughts, I disagree with your feelings, or I agree with your feelings, but I disagree with your thought. So now we can articulate what exactly is not being received versus when we just simply put it out in a person like, I just don't, I just know. And then we start to feel attacked. And the reason this attack feeling happens is because, like we said, an opinion is your thoughts and your feelings, right? So if a person asks you, how is it outside? And you say, I think it's cold, that's based off of your thoughts. So you're not wrong in the way that the information has come to you and this provided you with this thought. And I feel that it is pretty nippy. That's how it feels to you. What is wrong with the way that you think? From information that came to you, that's a natural aspect. When any information comes to you, it's natural for however you dissect it come. That is your natural process. That's your natural thought. There's nothing wrong with that. That's the way you interpret it for yourself. The way you felt from interpreting it, that's natural. That's your natural feeling. So this is why we are not communicating any wrong by our opinions, which is our thoughts and our feelings, because it's basically the way that our brains is processing information that's being presented to us first hand, second hand, whichever number it may be. That's still the way that that's where the information is coming through. So you're technically not wrong for the way that you think or how do you feel, but we approach it in that way because we're taught to use an opinion as either an aspect that brings forth conflict, right? So you'll hear in a lot of conversations, we get to the point where say, well, you know what? Well, that's your opinion. That's your opinion. You hear how we say that? That's your opinion with that little hook thing like that. That's the way of using opinion as an attack. In other words, it is disregarding your opinion, meaning your thought and your feeling doesn't matter. That's what that means. Though we are using the label as an opinion, the energy behind it, what is being spoken, is calling the way a person perceived their thoughts behind it, what it made them think about, and how it made them feel about. You're saying that is inconclusive, doesn't matter, throw it off the table. Your thoughts and your feelings don't matter. This is why inside a conversation it become argumentative because of that aspect, because we're not understanding exactly what an opinion is and how to receive an opinion.
So before you go any further, so I'm still trying to grasp the whole idea of the feeling versus the thought,
Mm-hmm.
and how each type of person may be coming from this point of view, and then your response is from this point of view, and that is it. Are you saying that's where the conflict happens?
Uh, Experience this process. The conflict happens. Well, there's many aspects to how the conflict happens. The aspects that I'm bringing attention to is the conflict that happens from the way that we say, well, that's your opinion.
Mm-hmm.
When we're weaponizing an opinion and we're using the way we're phrasing it as
Mm-hmm.
a real, like, kind of under the radar, unaggressive way of disregard. So instead of me pushing out the way, I'm just like
Right.
that, you know what I'm saying? And then the next aspect I'm communicating, experience this process, is stating that this happens because we're not able to receive what exactly is an opinion. When we have an understanding that this is a person communicating, this is how it made them think when the
Mhm.
information came to them, and this is what it felt like when they took it, then we have a better way of being able to receive that, because now we understand, well, that person is not wrong in their opinion. This is what it made them think when they saw it or got involved with it, and this is how it felt to them when they had to touch it. So now we know we can respect it, but it's not being broken down in that manner for us to understand it. We're taught to deal with it emotionally, just based on how we feel toward not knowing how to receive it from each other. And we're
Mm.
responding off of that instead of actually the acknowledgement of what is actually being placed in front of us.
So before you get to the solution, can you do you have an idea of why that happens? Why? So if I am saying, and most times people say, for me or my opinion, that's how most times the argument is presented. And then you say whatever you say, the person still refuses to hear that this is how you think, but they don't understand how that pertains to what they're saying or what they're feeling or thinking. So,
Mm-hmm.
do you understand why that happens?
Right. Experience this process. That happens because we're not taught. We didn't have any training into how to receive another person's opinion.
Mm. If it's
So
different from yours.
right, we were never taught that. So experience this process. When we're trying to communicate with one another, we get to this part where now it's time for us to communicate with each other, how to receive each other's opinions. And we're trying to skip over communicating how to articulate that part, and
Hmm.
we're just still trying to move forward. But when it comes to that part of conversation, it is now time to is the energies between the two people are now at the point where it's not about what you're communicating about, it's about briefing each other on how to receive each other's opinions now, because
Hmm.
we can't get further until we know how to accurately do this, and we have to change the conversation at that point to understanding what is an opinion and how to receive it. Then once we address that, because that's really what's trying to be communicated, it instead of that actually being literature being formed to communicate that, it just becomes friction of back and forth emotional outbursts.
Mm.
Literature is not there. So this provides a way to create literature. When you find yourself in that situation, it's time to educate each other on what exactly we are calling an opinion, which is a thought and a feeling. When I got this is what it made me think about, and this is how it felt to me. And when we understand that, now we can get, now we have brought the comfort, the comfortability, because we provided the literature on how to communicate that. Now we could progress with the conversation.
So why are we so affected? And I understand where this conversation will go, but why are we so affected by how other people feel if it's different from how we feel or how we think? I'm trying to, in my own personal life, trying to understand how people attach themselves to how I feel or how I think, and then make that feeling, that difference, an attack on them, or they take it as an attack.
Experience this process. The number one aspect of that plays a role into that is we don't know the laws of communicating. We're going into this communication thing without any guidelines on how to keep things in order, how to keep it managed. We
Mm-hmm.
don't have the law. So the first law is, what is the law that how do women process information? How do men process information? So we have
Mm-hmm.
to have that inside of our knowledge of coming addressing this order. Well, I'm gonna have the men actually want to express their thoughts before they express their feeling. So automatically that's gonna irritate a female, a feminine energy when you're doing that, because she's not concerned with your logic. She's more concerned with the feeling. You spend too much time communicating the logic, that's irritating,
Right.
because she can't, that she's not process that, you know what I'm saying, she's hearing it, but at a certain time people have so much amount of time before their cup runs over. So
Mm.
we become long. We because of not knowing these laws, we end up communicating. And this is just dealing with the feminine aspect. Too long-winded of a logic, and they're not going to communicate back saying they don't understand. They're just going to stop listening,
Mm.
or they're going to take a particular part and build an energy toward it, and everything else that was connected to it not really mattering to a degree. And then
That's what we call reading between the lines. So you're taking the words that trigger you and you're making that the argument versus the complete thought of what I'm saying.
right, experience this process, hence going into that person's learning style as well. Because if you're using words like watch or get or step one or listen, depending on their learning style, it triggers them into what is importance, because those trigger words end up catching them to the point like a highlighted marker. Soon as you hit that particular word, it's highlighting, and that's the part that they're holding on to. Not to mention that we use words like but a lot of times in our sentences that cause confusion as well, simply because but is a
Mm.
deletion statement. So it's like a person commits to the conversation with you, and they're following you as a commitment to what you're saying is valid and of holding weight. And then the word that connects to it is but. So that just means delete everything that I just said.
Yes, that's
This
how
one
I normally
right
see
here.
it.
This is what
Hmm.
matters right here. And then that what it does to the listener, it causes them stagnation where they're like, well, why should I commit? This is not being communicated, but this is in the energy of listening now.
Hmm.
Now it's stagnated because they had this whole download of information that was nothing but a junk file. And now this information is being communicated that this is of importance without giving them the comfortability of being able to navigate with that flow. So
Or
it's
the but becomes the conflict because you said these things, but the moment I hear but, I hear one like you said, dump all that information, and what you're saying to me does not equal to what you just said. But is not an equal sign in an argument. It's definitely is a subtraction sign.
there's a subtraction, and we're not really good. Our rhythm is off when it comes to it, because what keeps rhythm is a count.
Hmm.
An account represents laws,
Right.
structures, and boundaries. And we're not practicing laws, structures, and boundaries. So we're going to this whole communication thing with lack of rhythm. So it's like we're on a beat and we just so off beat. And everybody don't, ain't nobody got no rhythm in the conversation.
It. First of all, sir, I where the hell have you been? Because when you just, I never, even in our conversations, I was sharing with you some things some arguments I was currently having. And I never looked at it as when I say one of those trigger words, I may have tapped into their learning style. And they begin to highlight at that moment. So that's why they only heard that piece
Mm-hmm.
or they go
Right.
back to those it's like when you're taking notes in school, so you're supposed to highlight the parts that mean something to you, but when you're communicating with somebody you can't do that. You have to hear the entire snippet of it. I've learned to be more abbreviated when I am in argument with someone, so they don't have too much information and it becomes overload. But I can clearly see right now that the person I was arguing with started highlighting at this point. So everything I said before that or even after that, they heard nothing of it.
Yeah.
None of it. None of it. And I kept saying, I'm like, wow. And I said to you, like the fact of being misunderstood is frustrating to me because I often over explain just so you get it. But I'm sitting there like, what? Am I speaking another language? Like, what? You didn't hear nothing? That's all you heard was the but. And then the sentence that came after that.
Yes, unfortunately, that's how it goes. The greatness of it is about understanding these laws, even if the person you're communicating with doesn't understand them, because
Mm-hmm.
of the knowledge of knowing trigger words, the understanding that I haven't understood that person's learning style.
Mm-hmm.
I came into the conversation not addressing, because we can come to a man and a woman. We're not communicating with each other as man and woman. Like other languages have words for women and have words for men, but
Right.
the English language,
Mm-hmm.
yet the English language doesn't exercise that
Right.
besides he or she. So when we're communicating, you may have a female come to you and ask you how do you feel about something. She's communicating to you as if you're a female, because
Yeah.
she's expecting for you to be able to give a feeling before a thought. So she's addressing you as a female, and you're
Mm-hmm.
naturally going to not accept failing at anything, because no one wants to be a failure at anything. So we're going to proceed and we're going
Right.
to be excelling and answering, but
Mm-hmm.
failing in giving the truth.
And it happens to men and women, because I'll have a guy come to me and tell me something he going through, and be like, why the hell couldn't she get it? Like, you just got it, and I said 4 words and you got it. And now I'm understanding why that happens that way, because they
Mhm.
not even realizing they're speaking 2 different languages.
Right, right, exactly. Because we're taught this thing that we are all this. Well, we're taught that we're everybody's different. This is the
That's
statement
the
that's out
adult
here.
life. So the adult life, we're all different. As children, you're all the same. You're all the They try to group us together.
And even with these statements, they're bland statements that don't give clarification to anything.
Right.
Because if we're all different, then tell me what is the difference? How do I know if we're all different? Then you're supposed to be able to clarify to me what is the difference and what is the connective in the difference. Because a screw and a bolt is different, but we can clearly see that they go together. You
Mm-hmm.
see how they work. But just saying that everybody's different, everybody learns different. Okay, where is that getting me? That's just a
Mm.
way that you're giving a bland statement. It sounds intelligent. Don't get me wrong. It
Right.
is half of it. That's the masculine energy part of it. It's everybody's different. Get that. All right, give me the feminine energy. Let's bring clarification to what makes the difference, and let's bring them together and get the child, the Holy Trinity.
But see, they would have to know that in order to teach that. And I
Right.
think when we were in another group a day or so ago, that was part of the conversation. Like, sometimes what I know to be true isn't always translated when we're speaking to each other, because you're coming from another perspective. So how are you to understand the my language as it pertains to my experience, or my educational level, or my communication style, or my learning style? Like, how are you supposed to know who I am, even if we know each other? So this topic of love language, when you gave it to me, I assumed how we show love, and that's exactly what it means. But I automatically, what the things that we do for each other, or the things that we say. For me, my love language is my time and my attention and my support. That's how I show my love, and supporting people in their spaces and helping them do their stuff. How does that, what I took that meaning, how does that relate to learning styles and communication styles and such?
All right. So experience this process. What you're communicating is how you show love, right?
Right, how I show it. Mm-hmm.
You can show it, but there's no literature to it.
Mm-hmm.
So what we're doing is, how do you turn that which is in I view into accurate literature to be communicated?
Mm.
Other than that, it's going to be an assumption.
Right.
I just thought you were being nice. I just thought it was something you like to do. Without
Mm.
it being properly communicated as such, a
Right.
person doesn't know. So
Mm-hmm.
this is why it's important to, how do we communicate that? And how we actually communicate that is finding the accuracy. So everything operates off of logic and feeling, right?
Mm-hmm.
So if you're going to communicate to a person what you are meaning by love, you're going to you have to communicate what is your thoughts on it and what is your feeling on it.
Mm.
So this is how we get to accurately communicating. So we just do a test run. So all right, experience this process. I would ask you. My first question would be to you. All right, I could type it in right. Let me, because I don't want to lose it. All right. So my first question would be, what do you think love is?
Mm. Mm. I think at basic form, love is. I don't. That's a hard question because it takes me back to my what my how I show love. So
Mm,
I guess to me, love is the expression of how I feel towards an individual. Like, and that sounds like I'm defining the word with the word, but to me, that's the basic form of it, the expression of how I feel.
all right. Great. Excellent. That's the thought. All
Mm-hmm.
right. So now my next question is, how does love feel?
Mm. Now that's the get you gotcha. In my opinion, love is supposed to feel good. It's supposed to inspire you. It's supposed to lift you up. But often, I guess the abuse of love or love neglected hurts. So I don't know how to combine them two or how to separate them, but that's how I see it.
That was a good one. That was a good one. I like that. All right. So experience this process. Remember earlier I was saying that love is a label because we got
Mhm.
Kupinda represents love, but this is a whole different label, but it still represents the same thing. Then we got in English, we got love, and then in Spanish we got amor,
Mhm.
right? So what
Mhm.
that's communicating to us is that you can change the label on it,
Mhm.
but it doesn't change the function.
Mhm.
All right. So this is what I'm going to do. I'm gonna read you this definition.
Mhm.
This is a definition out of your book, your internal dictionary. I'm gonna read your definition.
Mhm.
But I want you to destroy the label called love.
Okay.
The label, you're destroying the label. It didn't change the function. I'm gonna
Mhm.
read this definition out, and I want you to say the first word that comes to you when you hear this definition. But you cannot use the label of.
So I can't use the word love.
Right.
Okay.
Whatever the first word that comes to you when you hear this definition, the word that is sounding to you. All
Mhm.
right. So this is the definition. Experience this process. It is the thought that it is a hard question. It's the thought is it's hard to question. The feeling is hold on. It is the hold on, let me start over. Experience this process. It is the thought that is hard to question, expression how you feel towards an individual. It is the feeling that feels good, inspired, lifts you up, hurts, combined, or separated.
That sounds like toxicity.
All right. Toxicity. All right. So when you are communicating to a person that you love them, the word that you will be communicating will be toxicity.
Mhm.
Because based off your definition, which is your thoughts and your feelings, when you're saying I love you, you are communicating. You should the word toxicity should be there. Now, that doesn't mean toxicity is bad, but
Mhm.
based off how it resonates with you, this is the label that accompanied that thought and that feeling.
When I'm in a space of love,
Mm-hmm.
and
Yes.
it's I was trying to choose in my mind complicated or toxic, but once the word hurt was added to the definition, it kind of changed the perspective of what I was hearing or where I was hearing from. So that's where toxic kind of came in at, but it started off complicated.
So we're gonna add complicated toxicity.
Hmm.
All right. So when you're telling the person that you love them, what you're saying is it is complicated toxicity. That's exactly what you're really communicating
And
based
that's
on your
in
thoughts
this,
and your feelings.
yeah, because I hold on two things. So when you gave me the topic of love language, I even in my expressions in me meeting you, I always explain how I love. So I'll help you. I'll take your idea and help you get it seen or get it heard or put it somewhere. I have to explain that because especially being raised by cancer, you sometimes can be overbearing. So you have to explain, oh, that's just how Nate loves. That's how Nate loves. So I never wanted to be tough or, you know, like my love to be painful. So I have to explain it, but that makes sense. It though yeah, that makes sense.
Because experience this process, you're reading from your own dictionary of your internal self. For the
Right.
first time, you put a voice to that which didn't have one. You put literature to it. Now you can define
Mm-hmm.
your actual what you're communicating is love. Is a definition for it. You could express what is the thought, and the thought is it's hard to question.
Mm-hmm.
When the thought of it is it's automatically something that's hard to question without a shadow of a doubt, and it's the expression how you feel
Or hard to
towards the
define.
individual.
I think I said hard to define.
Okay, yeah, and it's hard to. Well, yeah, that first thing you said that's a hard question.
Yeah,
That's what
yeah,
you kept saying. You kept saying that's a hard question. So,
yeah.
experience process. When I ask people these questions, the first way they respond is the raw truth because
Yeah.
I'm capturing the true thought
Mm-hmm.
because it's original right now. It can't be scripted. It's not something that you had time to prepare for because that's how love comes. You don't have time
Mm-hmm.
to prepare for it. If it came knocking on the door right now, this is what it's going to be met with off top.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I'm saying? In the introduction of learning it, to getting deeper into it, and then
Mm-hmm.
dealing with the past trauma of what has happened on this road before.
So how do we maintain stand in the moment of it? Even if it's spurred a moment, there should still be something that kicks in even seconds into it where I'm in the moment of it and not in the past of it. Stuck in because often we can be stuck in the past of what love is, especially spoken on love, or stuck in a future tense, what we want it to be. But how do we stay in the moment of it?
Mm. Experience this process. Well, it comes into understanding what your present moment is.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And if I'm not mistaken, your present moment is auditorial. So for you to
Mm-hmm.
be staying in the value,
Okay.
being one with the value, because that's actually your present moment, it's the sound.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Regardless of what the past, regardless of what love, or now we can say what it was called, complicated toxicity.
Yeah.
Instead of being in the past of complicated toxicity or in the future of what complicated toxicity be, what is it that it sounds like right now? Listen to the sound now. Just right now. Only what it sound, only what you're getting now.
Right.
That's the value.
So typically for me in an argument, I walk into something that I don't know what's going on. Normally, I can tell there's a different feeling in the room, and I address it. I'm direct in that way where I'm like, "What's going on? What's happening here?" And that
That's
person
a
may
good one.
slowly reveal what the problem is. So typically, I've said something, done something, demonstrated something that they took as something totally different. So it's very my integrity and my character and my name is very important to me. So I'll say, well, that's not me. And to them, I always know they're saying to me, "You don't value what I just said to you." And my response to them is, "I value what you said, but what you're saying is you telling me who I am, and only I can do that. I can only define me. You can have your opinion of me, but only I can define who I am. What I'm willing to do, what I'm not willing to do." And that's normally when I respond that way, that's where the argument officially starts.
Yeah.
So I'm trying to hear, Nate, what shouldn't you say? Should I just listen and eventually feel attacked, and then eventually let this person think they've defined who I am based off of a disagreement or a misunderstanding? Or do I stand up for myself and I let you know who I am, and I save my integrity and my name?
Mm.
So
Experience
that's normally where the argument starts at, right at that point for me.
experience this process. I could relate to that, and that is a tough one to navigate because from the way you described it, is if it sounds as if you are communicating with the auditorial teacher, and an
Mhm.
auditorial teacher is always, they're communicating the different possibilities of
Mhm.
values,
Right.
right? And
Right.
because you are a present person value, the
Mhm.
possibilities of who you are or who you could be doesn't resonate with the presence of who you is. But that's
So
not
so
what they're
you did
trying
it.
to
You
do.
did something. I think this yesterday. You told me you gave me my whole rundown. I'm this type of learner. I'm this type of teacher. I'm.
Mhm.
Can we pause for a second so I can understand what that is, so I can then connect that to what we're talking about right now? Because that'll be more helpful
Okay,
to learn
experience.
something.
All right, experience this process. You are a hands-on learner, so you use your feelings and involvement in order to learn. But you're a visual teacher, so what you see is what teaches you. What you learn from what you see is how it made you feel.
Okay.
All right. The way you remember it is based off the events that was going on, the motion, the build up, the energy, the cycles that was going on. It was a particular event that was going on. Things was moving in a certain direction
Hmm.
that gave a visual.
In terms of being a hands-on learner.
That this is just talking about the memory.
Okay.
See, your memories, when you're connecting to your memories, what you're learning from your memories is a way to feel from them.
Hmm.
So every
Hmm.
time you're attaching to an event, you get a certain feeling from it. But once that movement or that memory is communicating, what you're communicating is making that movement, those events, you're drawing it in one picture.
Hmm.
That's how you teach it. So that which is in motion, you know how to take a picture of it and communicate that moment,
Right.
which is moments. But when you're communicating it in one moment, which is a picture. You're drawing it.
Hmm.
All right. From that drawing, you connect to your feeling. From what it is you draw, you get an emotion from that. And that emotion, that feeling that you learn from it, that connects you to your present moment, which is sound. So you are an auditorial present moment. When you use your ability to speak, you speak the brain existence of now. That's why you say you could go into a place and you could tell the energy in the room. You're connecting to your present moment, your feelings. So
Hmm.
when you're using the word tell, you're communicating your feelings.
Right.
So experience this process. If you have an auditorial teacher, you're a feeling learner. So an auditorial teacher who is trying to teach you something is not getting through to you because the way that you learn, it has to be tangible, something that you can touch, and you can't touch the sound. But where you can relate to sound or value is in the present moment because you are auditorial present. Your feeling is present.
So is that why feelings throw me off? Because your feelings will throw me off. In conversation.
Oh, okay. Experience this process. When you're saying the feelings would throw off, that's because you learn through the feelings. So yeah, the feelings could throw you off or they could throw you on. because you have to. That's the way you learn. So you may make mistakes. Son. The feeling may not be right. You may not get involved with right. Yeah, that part. Yeah, but
Yeah.
that's the learning aspect because you use your feelings to learn. But the learning part is not actually the place of the feeling.
So
This is
so when I said that, so if we're in an argument and you're mad,
that's the part you're gonna
and
learn.
then so that's what I'm focused on, you being mad. That's the part that I'm mentally hearing. I'm trying to understand it and hear what you're saying. But then if you start crying, I'm thrown off because I thought you were mad. Now you're showing me sad. Now I don't. What's going on? I don't. You know, if you start off happy in the conversation, then I got this. But then if you change emotions, I'm thrown all the way off because I'm assuming that we're here, and then you take me there, and I'm like, well, where am I at?
Mm. So it sounds like when it's that particular type person experiencing the process, that sounds like a step by step person. That sounds like a
Yeah.
tangible person. So they're going to affect you more mentally
Mm-hmm.
in the logic department because that's where you keep up with patterns at.
Okay.
So when you're dealing with a step by step person that could give you sad and then they could go happy, because they
Right.
always changeable.
Yeah.
They're teaching it to you. Their goal is to teach it to you, but because your step by step memory, it throws you into la la land, where it throws you into like, where's the pattern in this whole situation on how this led
Yes.
to that? But that's not what they're trying to trigger you at. They're trying to get you to learn because the information is
Mm-hmm.
actually something to be learned from, but they don't know that you're a feeling learner. They're assuming that you learn the way that they teach, and they don't know that it's affecting you logically. So
Right.
they would have to say, experience this process. And when you hear the word experience, now it gets you to the point you are able to feel, and then you can go with them from anger into sadness, and it makes more sense because you're experiencing it with them. But
Mm-hmm.
without saying that, it's just going to throw you into the logic of the memory aspect, and you're just going to be looking into the past aloofness to how did this happen because you didn't learn from it. So that's why you're searching because
Right.
you haven't learned it.
Yeah. 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 When we're in those spaces of conflict, so you're in the space of conflict, how do we and I think I'm going back to the present moment, how do we stay in that present moment for our sake being a listener and a teacher, and for that person's sake being a listener and a teacher? How do we stay in line with the moment without drifting off or going to another space with it?
Okay, so experience this process. First, we have to be able to acknowledge and be aware of our present moment. What is our present moment style? Then we
Mm-hmm.
have to get into meditation techniques that allow us to not give energy into the thought that precedes a feeling.
So, what is your present moment style?
Visual.
Visual.
Mm-hmm.
So, how do you help yourself in that moment where there may be conflict or confusion?
Um,
Because you just said a meditation tool, so I'm curious as to how you tackle it.
Experience this process. I have a meditation technique that I use that I got from the Metal Nature book, that shows Asar, who is the mummy, who is identified as the aspect of life that is unconditioned. I
Mm-hmm.
mean, that's unconditioned, like nothing, no emotion, no reason, no rationality can change it. It's just there. And the meditation technique is for you to envision yourself as Asar, the mummy, wrapped up in cloth, and whatever emotion is going on, just imagine whatever energy is around you at that time, emotion,
Mm-hmm.
question what is the reason for it. But as instead of like looking for the reason, just put the energy of that's a reason there. See yourself wrapped up as mummy and
Mm-hmm.
say, Ung Vang Du Hung, Ung Vang Du Hung, while visualizing that image. And then what will happen to you, you'll hear, uh, you'll pretty much, well, it'll for you, it'll be like, well, yeah, you'll hear it actually. With Marshall, you'll feel it. It'll be more of a feeling for you, right? So you'll
Mm-hmm.
feel, you're saying that and picturing that the feeling of that reason, whatever the feeling that you was having, the reason, the feeling you was looking for, it'll
Mm-hmm.
present itself. And then you had the ability to understand what that energy was, what
Okay.
that visual was. And then this gives you the ability to let it go. Because once you actually be able to touch what it is and you can put your hands on it, now you can move it. And
Mm.
this gives you the ability to exercise transmuting your thoughts and being in the present moment, because it's your thoughts that try to make it seem like you can't handle the present, as
Mm.
if the present is finna go somewhere. And that'll be based off your past or what
Right.
you think the future may be. So we'll get caught into that part of last time this happened, or is a possibility this gonna happen, as if any of that regulates the present moment. The present moment is forever.
Man, this is a lot. I'm just gonna say that. Exactly. My phone didn't understand it either. In terms of how do we, because this sounds like you talking and it sounds good, but on paper, but the application of it is often because people throw you a trick bag on there, throw a monkey wrench in there,
Hmm.
and that's why I said emotion typically throws me off because then I get quiet and I'm just waiting for you to either finish crying or finish yelling or whatever that strong emotion is. It throws me off because I may be in my feelings, and I'm a person that doesn't stay mad. As soon as I breathe, take a deep breath, the feeling is gone. So at that point, I'm either just running off of fumes, talking to you, or be in an argument, or I'm over it and I'm gonna walk away. So I'm
See,
go ahead.
all right, so experience process. See the terminology that you're using. It throws you off, or you're gonna walk away. You're
Uh huh.
communicating movement, right?
Uh huh.
So remember your step by step memory.
Okay.
So that means that when you're communicating movement, you're communicating the logic. So you're
Okay.
saying when the emotions happen, you get caught into the logical part of you, the past or the future. And when you feel that happen, that's
Hmm.
when you have to sit to yourself at that moment when you're saying you're being thrown off. Acknowledge that that's happening. Don't get caught into the emotion. Separate yourself as like an out of body experience is happening now.
So I should not express that to the other parties involved. I should just think that in my mind because I say it out loud.
All right, that
When I
part.
feel it, I say it out loud.
Experiences process. That part when you want to say it out loud, don't. And don't and watch and understand that feeling that you have, and question yourself. At that moment when they're doing it, when you feel like you're gonna say something, don't, and have an internal dialogue, cut them out now
Hmm.
and go within self now and ask yourself, what do I think about this situation?
Hmm.
How do I feel about that situation? Do I think this situation is beneficial for me? If it's not, how do I feel letting it go? Now that I let it go, what thoughts do I have now? How do you feel now that you have that thought?
Hmm.
Now start back listening, and it's gonna sound different now, because you worked on that energy that normally takes over you. You stopped and went within yourself and meditated and worked it through, understood it,
Right.
what it was trying to teach you. Now that you know what is beneficial or not, by navigating through your opinions, which is your feelings and your thoughts. What do I think about it?
Hmm.
How do I feel? Do I think that it's beneficial? If not, do I feel like I let it go? Now that I let it go, what do I think? Now that I have this thought, how does it make me feel? Now come back out of yourself and engage the conversation now and listen. And it's gonna be so different.
And
It's
then
different.
typically I'm real in the moment with it, and I take what is funny is I take those moments, but as I'm computing it in my mind, I'm saying it out my mouth, and typically that leads me to, and very rarely does it happen this way, but if I walk away from this, we ain't never talking again. We ain't never talking about this again, and it's over. When I say it's over,
That part.
I have cut all. You no longer exist in my memory bank.
All right there where you are, the energy right now, right? Because we're here now. All right, so now
Right.
experience this process. Ask yourself, what do you think? So I'm just gonna ask you,
Mhm.
what do you think about that feeling?
I don't like it. I don't like that being my choice. And typically I try to push that choice all the way to the very bottom of the list.
All right,
Like
good. All right,
in the how I get involved in the conversation is I try to throughout like I'm trying to clear up any misunderstanding. I'm trying to understand what you're saying. I'm gonna eventually tell you my truth, and your response to my truth is very critical to what my next step is.
all
Now,
right,
if it goes left, I'm going to the bottom of that list, and this is over.
all right. So
And I don't
that's
want to. I don't want to go that route anymore because this cutting people off does not. Because what if I do have the problem? That's not helping me.
all right. So that's your thought. Because the
Hmm.
question was, what do you think? What do you think about it? All right. So now you
Hmm.
express your thought. How do you feel about that thought?
Oh, I don't have any concern. Once I've made the choice, I'm done.
All right. So now
So
that
my
you have,
feelings are normally done way before my mind is. My
all
mind
right,
is still trying to get it together, and my feelings like I'll wait for you.
all right. So now that's the feel. That's how you feel about that thought.
Hmm.
Now, what do you think about that feeling?
That's not for me. I don't think it's healthy
All right, good.
because
So now that you,
I'm normally shocked at how easy it is for me to cut someone off. I never felt like I had that power or that ability, rather not power but ability, to just cut someone off and you become invisible to me. I never thought. Like I know people who do that. I'm like, oh, that's a strong thing for you to do it. But for me, it was like, mm-mm. I don't like the way that makes me feel over time.
all right. So now that was how that was the thoughts that you got from that feeling.
Hmm.
So now that you expressed that thought, how do you feel now?
Um, it's still a work in progress because if it happens right now, I can't tell you that I would not have the same feeling or thought process.
All right.
I really
So
have to be. I'm starting to be real direct with myself and saying stuff like that.
all right. So now the question is, how what thoughts do you what do you think about how do you want to think when
Mm.
this situation occurs? How do you want to think about it?
Well, in my mind, every every argument I get into, I always say, I'm gonna stay calm. I'm gonna stay calm and I'm gonna listen and I'm gonna wait to be heard.
All right, cool. Keep it right there, right? All
Hmm.
right. So now that you have the thought of being calm and listening and wait to be heard,
Hmm.
how do you feel now that you have it?
It never goes that way. So I have never experienced that. Like
All right.
something happens. Well, remember I told you that part of the conversation where it just switches, and I realize everything that I planned is about to go out the window, and I still try to remain calm because calmness will help you listen. Uh, but it turns into I gotta protect myself.
Okay. So do you think that we could create a box in the past experiences of that happening and you
Hmm.
didn't experience that? Can we place those? Do you think you create a box and place those past experience where it didn't happen inside the box just for a second?
You say that again. Say that again
Those
for me.
those experience this process, those past experiences that you
Hmm.
never experienced, like the calmness and being able to achieve that. Can
Hmm.
you create a box and put those past experiences of not achieving it in the box just for a second?
Uh, well, I typically throw them away after every time it happens.
All right.
So you're
So
saying in that moment, wherever I'm drawing that feeling or thought from, put that in a box in that moment.
right. So that was saying like right now in this moment, do you feel
Hmm.
that you can create that box and put it in there right now?
Yeah, emotionally, yes, I can do that.
All right. So now that you've done it, experience this process, what thoughts do you have now that you see that separate from you?
What thoughts do I see? Hmm. I don't even want to argue.
Great. All right. So now that you have the thought that you don't want to argue, how do you feel now that you have that thought?
Um, first of all, this wasn't supposed to be about me. But that's where, honestly, that's where it stops for me. Because if I'm, because first of all, it's for me to say I don't want to, I don't go into anything thinking that it will be an argument. For me, I just feel something funny in the room, or I feel a different energy in the room, and I can tell something's wrong. So
All
I
right.
normally address the awkwardness that's in the room, not knowing that it's about me and that person or those people. I just typically feel something, and I'm the one that typically addresses it and doesn't let it linger. But I never go into anything thinking, "Oh yeah, I'm about to get to the bottom of this."
All right.
'Cause I don't know what's on there.
But now you had a feeling that you don't want to argue, right?
Right.
So now we're going to approach that situation that you had in the past, and this
Mm-hmm.
time come with the perspective that I'm not going to argue and navigate
Right.
that experience now with that
No
energy.
matter what happens.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that's how have you learned to deal with that?
Through the experience process, through the techniques that we're using right now,
Mm-hmm.
I just have this dialogue within myself. I ask myself, what do I think, and listen to myself, and then ask myself, how
Mm-hmm.
do I feel? And I just be honest with my thoughts and feeling until I get to the part where I find where the problem is at, and then I
Mm-hmm.
create a box and I separate that from myself, and then I replace that. I replace that part that will left me with a more beneficial understanding or beneficial emotion, and then I use that energy and approach the situation, and I get a different type of understanding and wisdom. Because
Mm-hmm.
when we get addicted to a certain emotion using to solve a problem, we don't know that we have abundant of emotions that we could use.
Mm-hmm.
So this gives you the ability to put a different emotion in there. You don't have to wait for it to happen. You just simply put it there with your mind, thinking yourself, feeling yourself into it.
Right.
And when it's there, you revisit the situations in your mind because it's always theirs in the past. And now you go back and let me address it now that I have good, now that I don't want to argue in my heart. Now let me look at the situation. Well, now that I don't want to even argue, there really doesn't have much energy in it because without me, there can't be an argument anyway. So I can see where
Right.
my participation in it was because shoot, when I come in when I don't want to argue, there's nothing to even talk about. So therefore, it's an
Mm.
experience that I don't even go through. So now I've learned how to navigate those situations by just putting a different energy within myself that I actually feel more better.
Mm-hmm. And I'm looking at the screen and it's saying love language, and I'm realizing how literal you meant it to be. And I am in a space of trying to figure out, I'm reconnecting myself to my life, so to speak. And part of that has been I don't like arguing because it does take a certain space out of my life. And I'm breaking cycles. And as many of us go through this, I'm more of an observer, and I'm looking at people's reactions differently than before. Like I noticed when we're in our social group, uh when I see tension happen, I see you just not drop off, but you just stop talking. Like you're not gonna fight the friction, you're not gonna try to compete with it, you just get quiet. And I'm the exact opposite, because I'm just gonna push a button and eject you from out of my space. And that's, it's such a harsh way of dealing with conflict and communication even, but I'm not gonna say it's worked for me before, but it's been an easy go to. Let me just remove myself or yourself from this, and then I just carry on.
Is connected experiences process connected into what our ancestors was communicating as our animalistic side, and that's the side that's attributed to I could do this or it's all of this stuff attributed to like what the animal kingdom uses as a means to solving an issue. But in
Hmm.
actuality, that's our lower nature. We can get things done without having to get into our animalistic side by just bringing a balance to the situation with the knowledge. It's nothing that we could possibly do that's going to change another person's perspective, just doing this right here and that right there. But it just becomes your mannerisms and behavior of knowing how to detach yourself from it. Now it's about preserving your energy. It's making sure that, is it beneficial for you to go further, or is it going to have a impact on you where it's going to make you feel down after all this smoke clear? Is that what you're really trying to experience after that? Or are you really trying to exude a sense of peace at all times in your life? So then you'll start practicing the aspects that always maintain your peace, because this too shall pass, and you don't want that to pass with residue of negative energy of replays of something that wasn't right, because that's no longer in existence. So now we're caught back into the logic again, listening to the thoughts and not exuberating the present moment, which that doesn't even exist.
So how do you, whew, sir, you're in the wrong profession. I'm trying to figure out how to connect this to my learning style as you've begun, because I'm still trying to get that. That I'm gonna ask you a couple more times, because I'm trying to figure out what that means, so I can have awareness, a better awareness of self, as I'm learning how to identify that in a different way than I was taught how to identify it in other people. That's why when you first presented this to me, it immediately went to communication to me. This is a communication conflict resolution tool, because one of the worst things that I see within our Black culture is we don't know how to talk to each other. And it's based off of your experience with totally different groups of people. The person that you having the issue with talking to a certain way, that person even may not even be a part of your history. But I've brought that toxic train to every relationship that I have now. And I'm just noticing how we talk to each other is, it's just out of this world.
It's simply experience this process. It's a multitude of things that's going on in communication. So all right, so for example, let's say you're having a conversation, just starts off regular, right? And it's particularly talking about tires on the car, right? So it's starting off regular talking about tires of the car, but then you could tell that the person is getting it, tension is starting to rise, right, on the subject. But we'll ignore communicating the tension and continue talking about the tires. In the moment where that shift happens, it is time to stop the conversation on the tires and put the energy of understanding into what is causing the tension. So we have to know how to communicate that. Well, why is it, if the person's like, I don't really care about the tires. Well, okay, I get you don't care. But why is it that why do you think that you said it like that? Don't insinuate to a person why they're doing it. Help it, address it as a way of asking them what are their thoughts and what are their feelings. And that gives you clarification. And it also helps that person to learn themselves, because a lot of times they're not even aware that they're doing that at that moment. They're caught into the feeling. They're caught into it. They're in a trance. So it's like you're breaking them in by saying, why do you think you just did that? Instead of saying, why are you doing all that? Now it's offensive, because you're telling them their natural way of receiving things is wrong. That's a wrong thing. You just simply say, why do you think you do that? What you mean by think? Or why do you feel you're communicating with that energy? What does that energy mean? So it's like I'm learning. It's different. I'm learning. So it's not the conversation no longer about the tire. It's something going on right now, and what you're really trying to communicate is this part. So let's get it there, because we can't go further if we don't address, because this is going to build up, because there's no literature to it. So it's just like children. When they don't know the literature until when they're tired of playing with a playmate, they'll hit you. You're like, why you did that? Was mean. You hurt that person. They no longer want to play with them, but they don't have the literature being communicated to them. When you're tired of playing and sharing your toy, you tell your friend, I don't want to play no more, and you walk away. But they don't have the literature, so they just know to react and hit. That means I'm tired, I'm aggravated. We do this
Mm,
in conversation. We just change up with this energy instead of addressing what that energy is. So we have to learn how to communicate energies. Where yes, it's good for us to communicate a conversation on tires, but within the conversation about tires, there's energy waves that's going up and down. And when it's an energy
yeah.
wave that is an uncomplimentary, so we call a negative energy, we have to
Mhm.
know how to address them. So it's another aspect of slavery of us teaching, turn a blind eye to things that we see is wrong. We're always, when something's not right, don't get involved in that. We're not taught to build a relationship with negativity. We don't know how to address it properly. So we have to learn how to communicate these energies that we call negative within conversation by not just going with the topic, but addressing why do you, if it's a female, why do you feel you said it like that? What
Mhm.
thoughts do you want a person to think from hearing that? Well,
Mm,
when I heard that, it made me think this way and it made me feel this way. How
right.
do you feel about the way that I took it? Now we can actually navigate because there's multiple dimensions that's going on in the conversation, not just about the topic, but sometimes people want to talk about their energy, what's going on with them internally too. Right?
Because in you saying that, I'm hearing what I heard you say was, his frustration at the tires was really him having something else he wanted to get out, or
Right.
them wanting to get out versus them saying that, because the analogy you use for the children, I see that in the children. I have pre-K, first grade, and kindergarten, and I see that, and I'm in my mind. The first thing that I think, they've watched somebody use that behavior to get what they wanted, or it's been used on them. Like, if I'm tired of you being in my face, I push you, leave me alone, and that's not. You then pick up that behavior, not knowing what you're doing, but the way you just explained it, that's scary, because you see adults start doing that.
Yeah, because yeah, those
Right,
are
you see
grown
adults start
children.
doing it, right.
You have people that's not honest with their feeling. They clearly have attitude. What's wrong with you? Ain't nothing wrong with me. You could clearly see because they don't know how to put the literature to it. So
Right.
we're all affected by lack of knowing the laws, adults all the way to children. We say that the children are mimicking the adults, but in actuality, not really. They're
Mhm.
just in the beginning stages,
Yeah,
exuberating that we don't have this foundation for them. We don't
right.
have this for them, these tools that is needed for them to be civilized human beings.
So adjacent to this conversation is a thing that people do. So what you just said just now, and you asking somebody, because typically people do that to me. Like, I'm learning how to just be in my feeling. Like, whatever I'm feeling, and I'm learning how to be in it. And somebody will ask you what's wrong, and you be like, "Oh, I'm good," but they see something. But the issue that I'm really in vain in this is how we take things personally in our communication, and that's whether it's an argument or love or whatever. But we have this thing of making it our problem. So now you may be going through something that has nothing to do with me, and I've made your struggle mine, and I've made you the problem, as if you're putting that on me because we're in the same atmosphere and you're having this feeling. So I assume it's about me. What
Right.
do you, how do you think we can resolve that thing in us that makes other people's stuff about us? Taking it
Experiences
personal.
experiences process. This comes from always knowing that your peace is your strong foundation. So if you're maintaining peace and somebody comes with a disruptive energy, then you know it has nothing to do with you. You know it has something to do with them. They may not
Hmm.
be aware of it because they're too caught in it to understand that this energy is coming off like this. They're thinking they're normal. So here we go. We bring communicate. God gave us the ability to communicate in order to bring the harmonious union between us and life around.
So why don't we know that? Why isn't that written on the buildings or something? Why?
Well, we know it, we just don't understand it like
Practice
we
it.
should. It say in the
Mm-hmm.
beginning, God. It said in the beginning, God, the word, God gave the word, and the word was God. So when God did that, He was speaking to all things, and when He chose to spoke, He spoke the words of order that brought everything into understanding of that union, the oneness. We hear it, we say it all the time. We're just not connecting it as a tool for us because we're not connected to the God in us. So this aspect kind of goes over our head because the people that are running things don't know how to talk to each other. They practice it in the movies. The whole life we've been hearing talk that doesn't even make sense, from racism to bad talking language and making it sound like it's okay. So we don't think that there's laws in it. But now we're hearing that there are laws. We
Mm-hmm.
just we're in the beginning. We're in very beginning stages of developing the arts of communication. We're very primitive in this thing. So these foundational tools that's being presented now, yeah, I'm bringing them at the forefront. Probably 10, 20 years from now, we'll exceed to a whole nother level. But right now, we're just in the beginning stages because we don't know how to communicate with energy.
Mm.
We're
Mm.
energy beings. We're communicating on status. We're communicating on social titles. We're communicating on the activity of, like, if you're strong or you're weak. But we're
Right.
not communicating energy. We're energy beings. We're atoms.
But you know the conflict that I'm having. There is a lot of people that's right now they're using that energy term a lot, and I'm not disputing you, but in
Mm.
terms of I don't want that bad energy around me. I don't think they really understand, like you just said, what the energy is.
They don't know how
To
to come. They ain't
even
got the literature for it. If a person comes and say, "I don't want that bad energy around me," keep in mind that bad energy is all assumption aspect. Just depends on where aspect you are
right,
in. But when a person, usually people are using that the same way, like they say, "That's your opinion." They're using that in that same manner now. Now they're trying to say that the ability of a person to carry energy, we're just going to say it as a way to cut off you being able to understand my position and me understanding yours. So when a person
right.
uses, I don't want none of that bad energy around, then what is it that is it you agree? Nobody wants bad energy around, so you're not disagreeing with them or having bad energy around. What are you disagreeing with them in? Is the fact that the way that they're saying it is as if it is you, and you want to know what is it about you or what is about this situation that is giving off the energy to them that it is a bad energy situation. So then you question, well, why do you think that you said it and held it so long? Or why did you bend back when you said, I ain't want no bad? Why do you think you did that, tilt back and did your head like that when you said it? What does that mean?
Mm-hmm.
So
Yeah.
now it's not about just keeping it a bad energy. Now we're actually getting into what is the energy. We're communicating energy
Mm-hmm.
now. Now we're dealing with the energy. We don't want to just stay at communicating something bad or good. We're never going to get nowhere. That's just the introduction. Now that we got the introduction, let's go into the reactionary responses when it was being said. Now this is what a true information is. This is what we really want to talk
Addressing it
about. Mm-hmm.
and being able to confront. I notice a lot of people. I know that confrontation has never been something I saw people good at. Growing up, my interactions with people, because either we confront people with force or we just shy away from confronting altogether. Like that's their business. I ain't got nothing to do. Or we hit people hard with confrontation, which both of them are at the extreme ends of it. And I don't see how useful either extreme is, other
Yes.
than like when you were saying just a simple question, why you would respond to me like that, or where's that coming from, or why, like that seemed more pleasant one, but it sounded I would not react defensively in hearing that type of question versus
Right.
you like, what's your problem, like you gotta get yourself together, like what's going, and you're making a person retreat and now I have to defend myself
In other
versus
words, you're coming in peace. This is actually saying I come in peace, but it's coming in peace in your literature. So
yeah.
you disarm that energy, and a person still may not engage going further with it or not.
Hmm.
But this is where it comes into the peace aspect, because
Right.
now you know if a person is not willing to communicate that, You can't force them to communicate that, but
Yeah.
you have brought a balance to it where you are maintaining your peace and you know you can't go no further with it.
Yeah.
So then you leave that. And what it does for the other person is it gives them, you still communicating, because when it comes to those type of conversations, you have communicated to them that you have to practice self-reflection. And what you did is gave them a mirror and they saw themselves. And they're not no
Mm,
longer talking to you because they're caught into their own image right now. And
right.
that's the lesson for them. And you help them to get there. That was what the whole conversation was about, was that they wanted to see themselves. They couldn't. You gave them the mirror, they saw themselves, they're seeing themselves. Conversation over with.
So where did this topic of love language come from in you? Like what was your inspiration behind it this week?
Well, it's because everybody, I know everybody has a different, when somebody's saying they love you, like yours would be complicated toxicity. So when you're saying you love a person, you're actually saying complicated toxicity. My love, when I say I love a person, I'm saying I'm gonna be honest and with you.
Hmm.
So if I'm telling the person I no longer love you, I'm saying I'm no longer finna be honest with you, and I'm no longer finna be involved or doing anything with you. I'm solo.
Mm,
So if and say if another person, their love must maybe care. So when I'm saying I no longer love you because their love is actually care, they're thinking that I'm saying I don't care about you. No, I care about you. I'm just no longer finna be honest and do anything with you. But I still care about you. I'm not taking my care away. I'm taking away my honesty and me being with you away.
hmm.
But that person is not going to understand that under the label love, because love is cloaking what I'm really communicating. So they're assuming I'm talking about caring. When they tell me that they care, they love me, I'm thinking that they're saying that they're gonna be honest and together with me. But they just saying I care about you, but that don't mean they're finna be honest and do anything with me. But they do care.
Right.
So my thing is like, okay, let's take that love label off, because people putting on too many things. I love cheese. I love my car. I love my children. I love this book. I love this car. You it's on too many things. Nobody
Yeah.
understands that. So when we're saying I love you, we're assuming we know what each other's talking about. But instead of me saying I love you, I simply say I am honest and I am with you.
Mm.
Now you're concerned with it. You, instead of you telling somebody you love, you say I am complicated toxicity with you. They don't
I've
like.
I've been that way with the word friendship. I attack
Friendship
that
is
word the
another one that's
same.
like that. That's
Right.
another word that's like that.
I attack that word the same way I attach love, because you can't. I used to have, I had a couple of people that, like, we would be around somebody and they're like, "This is my best friend Nate," and I'm like, "We never had that conversation," and I'll go with it not to embarrass them, but I would have that conversation like, "Are we friends?" Because I got some requirements for my friendship, so probably realizing, like you said, that's the same type of word though.
It
Um,
is. It is. That's
mhm.
another word that you got to break down and take the label and ask yourself, what do you think a friendship is? And what do you
Mhm.
feel a friendship is? And then ask yourself, what word comes to your mind? So then when you're telling somebody that they're your friend, now you actually know what you're actually saying, what a friend is. That
Right.
would help with a
Right.
lot of relationships too. People saying people are friends. We need to start asking, what exactly do you feel a friend is and what do you think it is? Now put another word to it. So therefore I understand what you mean, because
Right.
people, that's why people don't trust friends. I would say
Mhm.
friends, you can't trust them. But are we really saying what we think we're hearing a person saying friend, or are they communicating something totally different but
Somebody
using
who
the label
has not
friend?
been a friend. That's what they're saying. Someone who
So,
hasn't demonstrated friendship.
so
And
we
I
need to
called
come
a
up with
friend.
a, we need to
Yeah.
have a better label for that. Because just like love, like I said, my love, when I'm telling the person, I'm saying honesty and being with you, right?
Mhm.
So if I tell you I love you, you're not hearing that. So my what I'm calling a friend is something totally than what you may be identifying as a friend. If somebody I'm saying that's not a friend is something totally different than what you're identifying as not a friend. But I
Mhm.
need to be able to define that and put the proper wording to what's vibrating with me with that. So when you hear me say it, you know what it is.
Right. So how would you answer those questions that you just asked me today? And I'm sure that's something that those answers will change as you learn and grow and mature, or not. Those answers will evolve. But
Mhm.
how would you answer those questions today?
Well, what is love?
Yeah. So yeah, the
Really?
questions you just asked me.
it'll still be the same. I ask myself the question. That where I get it from doing that
Mm-hmm.
stuff for myself
Right.
first. And when I did it, it's for the first time I heard it. So that's exactly what it is. That's why I can say I love everybody. I'm
Mm-hmm.
honest with you. I ain't got no. There's no laws telling me that I have to be honest. You know what I'm saying? I can lie. There's
Right.
no law stop. So me being honest, that's love. Me being involved and I'm doing things with you, that's love. So that's why I'm like, I love her. I'm a loving person because I'm honest with everybody I come across. If I'm being honest with you and
Mm-hmm.
I'm together working on things, that's my love. That's what I'm calling love. When I take that off of the table, it ain't no love.
So how would you translate my response?
Your response to me is a great one because it to me is a depthness into the experience of love. That's and it makes sense with you being the feeling learner. So of course
Mm-hmm.
it's gonna come from there. So and like when most people will agree, yes, it is something that is hard to question.
Mm-hmm.
First time you hear somebody ask you what is love, people get tongue twisted trying to say they're like, well, everybody got their own definition. We start hearing all that
Mm-hmm.
type of talk because it's hard. It's hard to question. Well, really, what we're saying not hard to question. We're saying it's hard to give an answer. But
Mm-hmm.
we're relabeling this question. But when we give it, it's like you said, you know what I'm saying, there for that individual. That's
Mm-hmm.
the thought because a love is always going to be attached to someone outside of yourself and being, you know what I'm
Right.
saying, some type of energy from you giving something to another person. We can all relate to that. That's definitely true. And then when it
Mm-hmm.
comes to the feeling of it, just like how you describe, and we can't deny that there's no hurt when it comes to it.
Mm-hmm.
We can't deny that part. Nobody walk around saying that love don't hurt. You know
Yeah.
what I'm saying? It's just you are the more in depthness of the experience of it. So yeah, it
Mm-hmm.
can be complicated. The complicated part is that it's always something that's needing further investigation. It's a more involvement and it's toxicity because it's pain, it's still work, it's still understanding of self healing that has to be from it, but it comes from a good place.
Why is this a necessity for you? Like, why do you care? Why do you care? Why do you need this level of awareness? Because you could have took your hour and a half, your 2 hours somewhere else, or this process that you're in inviting people into this awareness that you've gathered. Why?
I think it's simply because I had a problem with it with my life and it made things so complicated. And I like peace.
Mm-hmm.
And I feel that it's just within my nature that
Right.
when I find an answer to share it, because I wish somebody would have shared it with me. So I'm sure it's others out there that's just like me
Mm-hmm.
that want to know and be very happy. So I'm doing it for the people that's at that point in their life where they're like, I just need, it's got to be something is missing. I just want to connect, and bring a sense of peace because I think life is enjoyable.
And I'm gonna say this every time I'm in space with you. I don't know where this is gonna take you. It's not my vision, it's yours. Um, but you are needed in spaces that where because this information, like you said, it wasn't something that was manufactured, so it should be in all of us, even if it's in a dormant state right now. But I'm just looking at all the environments that this is necessary and needed in, because even before I know how to receive from you or give to you, I have to first learn how to give and receive from my individual self.
Mm.
And there's so many different populations of people that don't have this, you know, and many of them feel like it's too late. Like for men, black men in general, most times when we get this type of information, we are so far gone in a given circumstance to care to change, to need to change, to have the desire to change. And it's just, you don't get it. And I'm sure you I hope you've gotten used to people being so inspired once you start giving them this level of information. Um, but where do you want to take this? Where, and I've asked you that before, but
I experience this process. It's hard for me to answer that question because I'm
mhm.
not visual as far as future wise.
So
I
you
can't
are
see.
auditory
I'm
learner,
mhm.
and what type of teacher are you?
I'm a step by step teacher. Like I'm a
Okay.
teach the movement. So when it's actually like where it's visually wise, like where I want to take because I'm visual present right now. Right now in the moment
Mhm.
is where I want to take it. If I answer it with visual, right now is it like me doing this right now? A couple of months and a year ago, I would just have conversations with people. I would never put no actual dialogue out here for people to go back and replay and actually see the person behind it and all this type of stuff. So
Mhm.
this is giant steps for me. As far as how if for me in the futuristic, I would have to use feeling because my
Mhm.
memory is feeling. So if I was to, what do I feel myself being? I feel myself. Um, I feel
So
myself being a very happy,
right.
powerful place actually. And I
Mhm.
really feel like this at some point would be at a very lower level for me because I'm always going up and up. Like,
Mhm.
so it's like as great as this information is, I'm still learning information that's making every time I learn something, it's just being a lower step because I keep climbing up. So I'm just like, wow, this is just
As
ooh,
another fellow Gemini, I'll say our ability to create
mm,
and envision, and that envision can be in sound and touch and um, physical visual, uh, can be exhausting because it feels as though our minds never shut off.
mm, yeah.
And I like being introduced to people like you that have overlapping qualities, but I am so in tune with how I see things
Mm,
because
mm,
it's just even you spoke about this how I create the visual for the advertisement or the because I like to translate what people say to me into imagery
that's
that I understand. So if it's sound, if it's a picture, if it's how things are placed, I love detail, and
yeah.
it is not so easy to step into that, but practice. I'd say for you, what would help you is start googling your thoughts, and when you Google something and then you click on image, and it'll
Mm,
start showing you pictures of it. Now,
mm,
at some point, it may not always match up to what your vision is, but it's going to start helping you to see what you're feeling.
mm,
Because I've talked to people who just don't see, they understand the end result sometimes, but it's that step by step, like where the road, where the road where I'm stepping at, and you just use the physical steps. But sometimes people don't see the steps, and that's scary to some people. But
mm,
start googling. So if you have a thought, write that out, or try to concise that into maybe 2 words, 3 words at most, and just Google it and see what images come up. And it's gonna, I don't know how that will connect with your learning style, but try it and see what that feeling is to be able to see what you are thinking or you're feeling. The backdrop for this, the
mm,
backdrop for this, how you explain this to me match with the time of day that we'll be doing this, what that we do this is where that image came from. And then everything else was just stuff that I needed to put on there to make it make sense. But
Mm.
it's sometimes when you just Google, because sometimes it helps me to just Google something I'm thinking or an idea that I have, Google it, and then you'll see all these images come up. All these images come up that
So
will
give me an example. Give me an example of a thought, and how do you Google it?
so like today, uh I'm trying to figure out um I clicked on love language. Um so this Google love language. Do you have Google on your phone?
Mm-hmm.
So if you just go to Google and just type it in and just click on images, and there's gonna be a lot of stuff that come up. But as you start to scroll down, you'll see, stuff, books and graphics and all those things. But maybe I need to maybe I need to further define that. So love languages for men, or just put men at the end. So you'll see something else. You'll start seeing more books and more mantras and stuff like that coming up. So as you're trying to research ideas or thoughts, you'll start seeing things that may trigger you to move in a different direction,
So
or may
this
take your thoughts in a different direction that you didn't think about going in. Go ahead.
so when I typed in love language and I just did what you said, like be able to see my thoughts
Mm-hmm.
during love language, this is the one that caught my attention.
Okay. 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 Yeah.
So, and I think it's because is two people together
Mm-hmm.
and it has these symbols around it that show that there's
Mm-hmm.
aspects that's associated with it. So it's like, yes, this is the love language, but what are these perimeters that's governing it? These represent laws, situation, boundaries. This is
Mm-hmm.
the information that's orbiting that. So it's
Right.
like that is this, but these aspects affect that. So it just it's telling you that you can, it's giving you the vision that you can navigate through those.
So let's look at the words that you're using. Orbit, navigate. Uh, when you're explaining this thing that you want to people, that will then help you to start understanding the vocabulary. Because as Geminis, we have our own language in our head, and we know what the hell we talking about. We know what we do, and that's how it. And sometimes we don't often make the best teachers, but we know what we're talking about. So as we get better at teaching, it's developing. You just came up with the words, those principles that are surrounding the unity. So now you're focusing on. So for that image to stand out to you, what I see is your focus in this is physical relationships between people,
Mm-hmm.
and what will help you focus is narrowing your search and narrowing your message so people understand what you're saying. Because I feel like this, and my issue right now is I'm trying to as I'm trying to build this platform and help you get this message out there. I'm trying to explain this to people, and I as I'm explaining it, it's still based off of what you're giving me. So
Mm-hmm.
for me, you doing that a little bit more, showing me some images that express how you feel about this or what you see this going, and then that will help you start setting concrete goals. Geminis are so not concrete learners. We're nothing about us is concrete. Our
Mm-hmm.
talents can be demonstrated, but we're stuck in a fantasy world, if you will, of dreaming and expressing and just thinking. And that can sometimes pause us in our advancement. And it's a feeling that I it's like writer's block. we get that often. It's like, and you feel like, man, I gotta do. And for me, I that's why I'm good at so many different other creative things, because I've forced myself to learn all the aspects of what we were doing or what I was currently doing, so I can have more understanding. But I think Googling your thoughts, like when you come up with topics, Google them, because as we're developing the platform, it'll help you to kind of pivot and learn other ways of expressing this information that is definitely needed. But for you pulling that photo out there, I pulled out those two words, orbit, and what was the other word you used? It began with an N, I believe. But and then you seeing that image of that love that between two people,
Mm-hmm.
that should tell you. So now, as you start looking at keywords, now when you put in love language between people of color, love language between husbands and wife, love language between friends. So now you can be more specific when you go to Google. Google is was one of the best inventions ever, because it really helps some people like us where creatively our mind is just always on overflow, but it helps us to kind of narrow down the message and the messaging in our goals.
This is cool because I just typed in images of process because I'm a process teacher.
Okay.
Oh, then this is the one that stood out to me the most on that.
Look at the steps. Look at the steps.
And each
Mm-hmm.
step, there's a
Mm-hmm.
amount of information, but this is always something that has to continue
Mm-hmm.
going. But so I'm like, yeah, I get what you're saying now to be able to see
Mm-hmm.
that. And then,
To
yeah.
break it down. Because you saw that, and that's the image that was in your mind. But it's
Mm-hmm.
just been translated. We need to get our thoughts out our heads and in front of us, so we can begin to chop it apart and mix it with this over here and really create an action plan. But I think that's going to be very useful to you in moving forward.
Oh,
Um,
yeah, for
yeah,
sure.
yeah, I think
For
that's it's
sure.
definitely a good, because it helps me out to be able to see it. Sometimes just seeing an image of something will give you an idea where you were stuck at into
Yeah.
moving forward.
That's amazing. That hey, experience this process. You done brought like the missing link because like what I can't put into the words hold a lot. Don't get me wrong,
Hmm.
but I
You
when
got
I
the
find the
words.
right picture, I can
Hmm.
find a picture that captures so much of what I am not being able to formulate into the words, but with the picture of it next to me
Hmm.
being able to say, okay, this is a process. I'm a process teacher, and I can have this
Right.
image up, and I can break down what the process is based off the imagery that's in front of.
Right.
This helps to be able to put them words inside of that picture. The picture could hold all the information.
And
So
and what one of the things right now, the lady Sharon, I think she just logged on. One of the things that I think when it helps you to relate to other people also, in terms of your message is very, what they would say, very Afrocentric based, very woke based, very uh book based. But when you're speaking to people, it helps to have imagery that connects them to, because again, we're dealing with people learning styles. So sometimes the translation of what we're saying gets lost because you found all these words to say, and it's clear that you know what you're talking about. It's very clear, but the disconnect could be, how the hell do I explain this? Because you're giving me so much information every time we talk, and I'm trying to like take that in. And then the other day when we were talking, I saw the gentleman trying to do that. Like he was speaking in your language,
mm-hmm,
but because he was still trying to figure it out, it was kind of choppy and it was a little,
mm-hmm,
disconnected, but I could still hear the language coming through.
mm-hmm.
But that's why books often have pictures, so we can kind of connect what we're reading to, and that comprehension, what we're seeing and what we're hearing, and it will connect to our feelings, our emotions, and then eventually our thoughts. But he
Experiencing
will
the
be.
process.
Mm-hmm.
Now it gave me more clarity being able to answer the question that you said at first, because like I said, I'm a process teacher. So that means even though I give information in process, but life teaches me that way as well. The same way I teach, that's the way life is giving it to me too.
So
So
you're the
it's like,
same way whether you're teaching or learning.
well, the learning is totally different. So it's
Okay,
like
okay, okay,
the teaching aspect, that's what I'm giving to the world.
okay.
But the world is also, well, I just say like God is what God gives to me is always through a certain time. Like I can't skip a step. Like, okay, I want to be a teacher. I want to go travel and give this message. But before I can actually get, though that may be what I want to feel,
Mm-hmm.
there's steps of, in order for me to get that, I have to master certain aspects. So I couldn't get to that part because I hadn't got the visual aspect together. So
Mm,
now this is incorporating, the next step is
right.
up. Now you know how to incorporate the visual. Then I got to learn how to incorporate, how to strengthen the involvement aspect for the involvers, and
The
then more
interaction.
the
Yeah.
audience. So it's like but I have to get into it. I have to start going with the steps
Mm-hmm.
for them to build, and as time go on, by the time I get to that 18th step, I've been on accumulated enough information that by the time I'm there, I got a lot of people being
Right.
able to engage it because I went through all of the process that it took to build to that
Right.
degree.
That's why I thought this platform would be good for you to work that out
Mm-hmm.
because it's going to force you. So, sidebar, when you're doing your in person meeting that you do, I believe on Mondays as well,
Mm-hmm.
you have that flipboard with
Mm-hmm.
you. And I looked at the flipboard, and I that's how I know you're not good at visuals at all because
Yeah.
everything was like scribbles and words. And
Mm-hmm.
what would that's why I was saying dissect that. So all the different points of that, find some imagery that kind of connects that message or that idea. So Google whatever that part is, and then you'll find a bunch of images because that those two images that you already had would probably be perfect for that in terms of explaining parts of that because I was trying to understand the flow of it. Like, where do I start and where does this, what's the rhythm of this or the direction that I go to? Am I going from top to bottom? Am I going in a circle? Where, how?
Right.
So that will help you to kind of re-visualize that in terms of the board. So now on here, I would love to help you to kind of continue to push that message. But that's why I was saying, let's find some photos, let's find some imagery, let's find things that connect for you, not even just for the audience, but for you. Because
Mm-hmm.
now you're not focused on the board. When I see you teaching your other classes, I see you focused on the board because that's where your messaging is. But now with the image being there, it's you're able to be more comfortable now turning and talking to us and really relating to us, relaying that message to us because you have a lot of different layers where you go into the historical elements of what this message is, then you go
Mm-hmm.
into the health nutrition aspect of what it is, and then you have a whole herbalist function in what you're doing as well. So all that makes sense. It just we have to find where the bridge is with all of that. So it doesn't have you're not having a lot of different information coming at people and there's no connection to it. But
Right. Right. Right.
this is definitely I wish I had this to build on as a child because I think it would have been easier for me transitioning throughout school and my relationships with people because just understanding the literal meaning of love language is very important because the words we choose to use are very important, but how we relate to people in that same process is beyond measure. Because if I choose not to understand you, then I'm not going to understand you. But if I take the time to even when there's conflict to address it, to approach it, and not just what I'm not dealing with you no more. Which was my method for a long long time. But I just think this is a way of giving people that message. I wish I would have just found some images of it, but yeah. I definitely appreciate it.
Yeah, I appreciate it because, like I say, um, it's a great thing for me. Like doing this platform right here, and
Mm-hmm.
like with you, I love that you're a visual teacher because that's
Mm-hmm.
my weak. That's like I said, that's my weakness. So you're strengthening me in the area that I'm weak at. And you know what I'm
Mm.
saying? I'm loving that because I feel my confidence building up in it, and now I'm really even more understanding how to build a relationship with the visual. Because like I said, the
Right.
visual is my present moment. It's the aspect that we're most unaware of ourselves. And now I'm being able to become, like I said, now you can see the mirror, you can see yourself. And now you're starting to build a relationship with this aspect that was hidden from you. Like, okay,
Mm.
you can strengthen that. This is how you're doing it. This and it's getting broke down. These are steps on how to get it. Put this picture with it. And it's what how does it make you feel? It's resonating with you. Now and then
Mm.
it's another understanding. When I'm doing the classes on Monday, he's actually a visual teacher as well.
Mm.
Um, so being in that space and being able to communicate that's more like hands on because
Yeah.
even though I'm right on the board, every people can engage. They can stop me and ask questions right in or something they're
Mm.
following. I can break it down. I can
Right.
get more animated with them. You know what I'm saying? Because it's just in that environment. So it's helping me to be confident in speaking to people, close range, close proximity, being consistent with each time I'm doing it. I'm learning more. I'm actually learning more, being able to come up with what the topic's gonna be, what angle I'm gonna come and address it, knowing how to keep up with a certain time. So
Mm.
all of this is coming together to bring me into like I guess I want to be a teacher. I want to just be a world well, I don't even want to say teacher, more so an educator,
Mm.
um, on a world stage of this information.
Right.
But I want it articulated to the point of where I'm actually like I am really gathering all the different learning styles by mastering the different ways of presenting them within
Mm.
myself.
Yeah.
So so it's because I
And
know
there are
what I'm
plenty of
talking about.
options. There are plenty of options for you. You don't have to take. I know for me, I just kept saying I want you to go and learn how I had to learn it because that's gonna make you see what the problem is and what the conflict is. Because this starts with children, and if we're teaching our children in this way, that's why they then grow up and become adults who don't still get these concepts, these basic concepts that should be knowledge. All of us should have knowledge of it, and I think we all have a piece of it. But as we meet other people, like you and I meeting, we're seeing what part I have, what part you have, and then connecting. But this should have been something that should have been at foundation, and it's at the core of it. It's just awareness of self, this awareness of self, and how we relate and how we connect to the people that we come across in life. So I really I appreciate you using the platform, and it's here because it's necessary. This is necessary information. I see you in jails and school environments and corporate environments because it's just politics. Like I'm not trying to tell you be any one thing, but they need you, even if it's in the capacity of like a life coach slash public speaker. I just think it's necessary because how we are starting to treat each other. I'm seeing during this pandemic, I think I said it to you before, we're so mean to each other, and I don't think that's any different than how we've been treating each other before this pandemic. But this pandemic brought it out in a way that was not just Republicans and Democrats, but just my brother and my sister just walking down the street with each other. It's just brought out a certain personality in us that we gotta get that together because we're not gonna be able to exist. We about to lose all our freedoms because of our attitudes towards each other. So,
Well,
whew,
got some solutions. So just tweaking these things, man. Just
yeah.
tweaking.
So, do you think the imagery part will be your next step or help you get into the
Oh
next step?
yeah, for sure. The next time we do our thing, I'm gonna have some
Hmm.
pictures for you for sure because
Okay.
now I actually know how to do it. Because at first I was
Mhm.
thinking just typing it in, and I know it's gonna be a whole bunch of different imagery, but
Yeah.
what I wasn't connecting is there was gonna be is a lot of imagery, but which one connects or resonates with what I'm saying?
Yeah,
And
you'll
that,
see it
yeah.
just like what you just did it. The one that popped out to you was the one that popped out to you. You will
Mm,
go and scroll down, even just save them, but still keep going down because it's gonna be one that's even more clear than that one you picked out first.
mm,
And sometimes you gotta go, your Google has to get used to you searching in that way. And you'll realize
right,
it'll start finding things for you. It's scary, but it'll start finding things in line with what you're searching. So you probably already have a lot of general topic things searched, but when you start, what is love language, you'll start seeing that it's different. When you found the steps, that's a different. So it'll start finding those things for you, so it'll be easier for you to point that out, and it'll be at the top. It won't be all those things at the top once you start actually searching those terms. So
yeah, I'm with it. You gave me something to work with. I'm definitely going in on that.
we're just under 2 hours. So if you want to close out to sell time.
Oh yeah. Listen to this process, organize this process, experience this process, watch this process. I thank everybody for tuning in, that it came in to tune in. It's definitely been my pleasure. I hope that these tools are beneficial and helpful. Just remember, if you want to know your love language or what you're communicating as love, if you're a female, actually get a pen and paper. First question you ask yourself is, what do I feel love is? And write out what you feel it is. Then ask yourself, what do you think love is? Then write out what you think it is. Write love on the side of the paper and put an X on it. You cannot use that word. Read that definition out, read the way it feels and the way it thinks, and then write down the first thing that comes to you and highlight that. And that's exactly what you're communicating is love. So instead of telling somebody that you love them, communicate that word which came to you and
Mm,
start using that so you can actually apply it in life and see that this actually resonates and feels better saying this, because now it sounds is different when you're actually communicating thoroughly what is you're
mm,
saying. For me, in total reverse, you ask yourself, what do you think love is? Write it down. And ask yourself, what do you feel love is? And write it down. Then read it out to yourself and and then write down what is the first thing that comes to you. Highlight that, and but you can't use the label love, just whatever resonates with you. We have to become comfortable hearing the inner voice in ourselves. And just like Nate was telling me to Google and be able to see the imagery of what it is, what I'm asking people to do is write down your inner voice. Look at what it looks like on paper. Be able to recite it back to you over and over and hear and understand what it is that you've been hearing in the inside. Now be able to see it written out and read
Fern,
it back to
Fern
yourself.
had a question.
Oh, okay. What did she say?
What if the first word is experience?
If the first word is experience, then that's what your love is, experience. So you would tell your children, I experience you. Tell your mother, I experience you. Tell your father, I experience you. I am greatly experiencing you. Instead of saying love, experience. So when you're communicating to the person that you love them, you're communicating that you experienced them. Your love, what you're coining, what you're labeling as love is actually experience. So you should start using the word experience instead of love. And therefore a person be more intrigued in investigating you now versus assuming they know what it is.
Mm, mm. So he be teaching. So we'll be back here in another 2 weeks with a new topic, a new perspective, and more of Taki. So let people know where they can find you at on social media or how they can follow your mission.
You can find me on Instagram at Taki Salam on Instagram, and I also have a Facebook page called Get Rid of Any Disease, where I go over different techniques to get over different. I have
That's
video.
on Facebook or
Yeah,
Instagram.
that's on Facebook. Just type in "get rid of any disease." I have to accept the invite, but it's all the information that you need on health issues, dealing with health, foods that we're eating that's causing diseases, techniques on how to reverse them. There's visual pictures there. There's auditorial lectures there. There's testimonies there. I mean, it's the whole kabang. It's an overload of information. It's taking forever to weave through all of that, but it's abundance. And so yeah, that's definitely where you can find me at. And yeah, I enjoyed the podcast as usual.
So that's been another edition of Communication into Translation with Taki Salam, and I am really I'm here. So if you've been watching this or you watch this on a replay, please share this out. Tell a friend. This gentleman is really positive. He's really doing something great in the area of just making us self-aware, how we communicate, and how we share in that communication language, learning, teaching, all those things. So,
Oh, I,
um,
I wanted to
all
mention also that I do classes on Mondays in Birmingham, Alabama. Um, I got that up on my flyer on Instagram, and I also
mhm,
have a YouTube page called Communication Translation, where all my classes that
mhm.
I've done are uploaded to there, so you can go there and listen in to classes on all the way to the very basics of it, all the way into the advancements of it. So I got all the information there as well. That's something that people are interested into as well.
So the 31st is the next class.
Hmm.
Every other Monday of the month will be here. So the next one will be the 31st. So thank you all for tuning in. Please like, share, and subscribe if you want to see more from Taki, Communication into Translation. Peace out.
Peace.